This is the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we teach you the proven methods to grow your seven-figure business to 10 million and beyond. Please welcome your host, Brett Gilliland.
Welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast. Every single week that I get to do one of these podcasts, I have amazing guests. Today, I have somebody that I've known for several years now. In fact, it's at least 7, it might be 8. And he and his wife own a personal injury law firm. His name is Mark Breyer. His wife is Alexis. Mark and I are talking today. We decided to leave Alexis out of it. But thanks for being on the show today, Mark. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, you got the B team without Alexis here. I mean, everyone's just going to have to just go, well, I bet it would have been better with Alexis, and they would be right.
Well, it's great that you guys have such a fantastic relationship as you unitedly lead this firm of yours that you've built now over the past, 27, 28 years, something like that?
Yeah, so we started, I think it was November 4th of 1990, it would be 1996. So It's been going on for a minute now.
Wow, that's fantastic. Okay, so your business is called the Husband and Wife Law Team or the Breyer Law Firm. Sometimes you get called two different things there, but you're in the greater Phoenix area. And I'd like for you to go back, not all the way back to November of 1996, but I would like you to go back to describe what it was like for the first about 20 years of making that go, getting that off the ground and growing it to a place over the first 20 years, and then we'll get into talking about the last 7 years.
Yeah, so when we started, Alexis and I, there were the 2 employees of the law firm. It was Alexis and I. We had no money, we had no clients. Some circumstances came together. I actually loved the job I had. Some things came up and we decided to start our own firm. We had no idea at the time. Now, Alexis is from a family of entrepreneurs. She was much more business savvy. I had these wonderful dreams, but basically what we were thinking is trying to be the best lawyers, and business was kind of just the thing that had to happen so we could try to be the best lawyers. That's really where our heart was and our mind was and our effort went. And of course, a lot of people out there who are technicians and have grown know this journey, because you keep hitting your head against the ceiling, but you don't want to do the business end. The business end isn't exciting, it's not fun. And then we started getting exposed to some business concepts and got a little bit better. And so we got about, give or take, close to 20 years into building a business, and it had grown significantly. We did have some tough hurdles along the way, like anyone else who grows. And we just hit a point where we were looking for something, not just a new marketing idea. We had people who really helped us with that and a lot of ideas. We needed to find a way to make the business reflect us better. You know, a lot of people out there I've heard it said by many speakers much smarter than me, probably including you, that in fact, you have a great line on this, Brett, that the business is a perfect reflection of you and your choices. What is that line? I can't remember it.
That's good enough for today.
All right. So we were at that point, right? But the thing was, we felt, I'm sure it was an accurate reflection of the choices we had made. However, it was not the reflection of who we were and wanted to be. It just wasn't quite working. And so that's when, and I don't know if you want me to go there, but it wasn't like we were nowhere. We probably had 20, 24-ish team members. We had great relationships with our clients. We had really grown in a lot of ways in terms of the people we were touching, revenue. Things were going well. But we felt like there was more there, but we couldn't put our finger on it. And so we were at that point, as personal injury firms go, for whatever reason, the lawyers who try cases generally, one, don't advertise. We were advertising, so that made us a little bit different to be both, I try a lot of cases. We're a trial lawyer firm, and yet we advertise. But they're also small firms. A lot of them are kind of the mavericks. They do it on their own, or they do it with 2 or 3 people. So even at that point in the low 20s, we were not a mid-sized business, but a mid-sized or maybe even a little bit more injury firm as they're generally built. And then we kind of bumped into you.
Yeah. Okay. So, and this does not need to be an infomercial for Elite today. But what we want to do is unpack some of the lessons that you and Alexis learned to be able to take a really nice business, a great firm. For the first 20 years, you guys built that thing organically, and we didn't get the play by play, but you did the thing, and you're at 20, 30 people, and you're into 7 figures in revenue. And it's like, this is working. But let's talk for a minute about what wasn't working. What was keeping you from getting to that next level? Or let's put it this way. What were some of the pains or frustrations you and Alexis may have been feeling as you were trying to keep that all together?
Wow. So yes, we had, like most people had, this was years before we met. I think we had about, I don't remember exactly, but 3 or 4 years where we were almost exactly hitting our head on $1 million in revenue. Not necessarily profitable. 1 year we were not profitable, but we had gone past that point. And these frustrations, I'm sure, are not unique, but at a certain point, you can only run so fast. And now we had brought on good people. What we had not done was build real leadership. And it's interesting because I remember this distinctly. You probably won't because of all the people and teams that you've helped, but you said to Alexis and me, how good is the leadership? In the first time we met you, I think it was called Elite Forum at the time. I can't remember what it was called, but in any event, the first time we met, and Alexis and I, we have great leaders. What we had were great people doing a generally good job at what we dictated for them to do. I would now not call that leadership, but at the time, it meant that they were helping others, so we weren't always dealing with everybody directly on their decisions, but we hadn't built a culture of leadership. We wouldn't have even known how. So I would say that one, we had tried for a lot of years to just run faster. We had gone past the point where the two owners were doing everything. We weren't there anymore. We had gone past that for sure. We had brought in good people. We did. We had a great team. Many of whom were lucky enough are still with us. But the idea of building leadership and then the framework, to be honest with you, I'm sure we'll talk about this because I've joked about this with you countless times, but what I wanted was nuts and bolts. I am just not a touchy-feely, it doesn't resonate with me, right? So I had been exposed to the touchy-feely conceptual world. I want actionable items. And so one of the biggest impacts on us was one of the first things that we ever talked about that in the first day or two when we were there together, which was values. But I hated the idea of values. And I want to put that in concept because I'm going to sound like some awful, evil person. One of the things we tell every team member before they're hired, and we talk about it every time the entire team is together, is that this company was built on 2 cornerstones. And one of those 2 is that we want everyone who works at the husband and wife law team on the day they retire, when someone says to them, the cake's out, hugs, where was your favorite place you ever worked? We want it to be here. I want them to live their best life, but my hope is that their best life for some period of time, or maybe longer than a little period of time, will be here. I wouldn't have used those words 8 years ago, but we knew very much that's what we wanted. We knew we wanted this to be a place that was more than a job. I'm sure we talked about that. It wasn't that I didn't want the things that values-based companies have. In fact, I would say in our mindset, we were values-based. But the idea of coming up with values that you put on a wall and pretend have any impact just felt very big business, customer facing, but not real world, political, Fortune 500 nonsense. That's how it felt to me, not how it feels now.
Yeah. Okay. Let's dig into that a little bit. So you talked earlier about how you had, by the way, you did have a culture already. You just hadn't really put words to it and put it out there in a way that we could intentionally live that day in and day out as a growing team. I remember very distinctly some of the core beliefs that you had, the core concepts about how you thought about your clients and how you thought about wanting this to be the place that they loved working. And like you were using those words before you ever put any values together. But I do remember as we were teaching you that in order to go from these superhuman entrepreneurial technicians, right, who are really good at doing what they do, to a place of building a bigger business, you have to create some shared identity. You have to set a vision with the team. And we talked about purpose and values and mission. And on this values point, you kind of got stuck. And you were very vocal about it. You said, yeah, I have a hard time buying into this. And I don't remember the exact words, but you were stuck. And I think you've talked about that a little bit already. But I don't know. What else do you want to say about your thoughts about values then? And what made the difference for you? What changed?
So, yeah, let me share a couple of examples if I can. I don't know if my hatred of the idea of spending time on values, what I wanted was the nuts and bolts, right? I wanted how to hire. I wanted how to grow people. I wanted how to fire. So to me, the values thing just seemed very touchy-feely. Like, we're going to write up all this value stuff. When do we get to the real work where you teach me how to find the right people, how to make sure they're the right people, when they're in, how to help people communicate with one another? And I didn't see values, and honestly, I didn't see purpose, values, or mission as things, those all felt very, yeah, whatever. When are we going to get to the real stuff? Here's how it's impacted me. When I finally came around to doing it, with some pressure from those in the room, and it was hard for me to do it, but now I realize it's the foundation, right? So, that I heard a statement once from someone that I met through Elite, and she said, don't should all over people. What we as leaders, owners, managers love to do is go, they should have known, they shouldn't have done this. How did, should. And we've all found ourselves in that position. Oh, they should know not to do that. They should know to do that. We all do it. Why does it happen though? And why does it happen so often? And why does it happen with good people? It's because what's in our head is not clear to them. And so you can sit there and say that, like, I'm a believer now that there is no such thing as common sense. I believe now, and I went to believe this 8 years ago, common sense is what all of us say, basically, no one will agree with me on this probably, but it's basically, this is how I think, and anyone should see it my way, is what we call common sense. Because, look before you leap, and he who hesitates is lost, are both common sense. It's like, so there's all these things like, well, you got to do your research. Oh, you waited too long, and we define it by the outcome. Someone's grown up with their own life experiences, worked wherever they've worked. What they think they should do may not be clear, even if you've hired the right person. So the values piece is, look, before we get down to the daily shoulds, who are we? And let's make it as clear as we can, and then let's use it. I was sharing a story with you today, Brett, before we started talking here about, well, a couple of things on the values. One, I only had 30 minutes because we were at a presentation. So I had 30 minutes this morning before you and I talked. I used the values 2 or 3 times in emails in a 30-minute, having nothing to do with that we were going to talk about values. The values are used because, and then I'll use an example. I could use one from the emails, but I'll use an example from a couple of days ago with one of my highest level leaders. That leader is responsible for hitting certain KPIs. And one of the KPIs is to make sure that our clients love being a part of this firm. Now, understand, our clients are hurt. It's often the worst part of their life. We can't make it not the worst part of their life, but we can make it where they're saying to people, you would not believe how well my lawyer treats me. You would not believe what this lawyer did for me. You would not believe the communication. Like, we can do that. We can't fix the underlying issue, but we can do our best to make it not add more stress, but in fact, make things clearer. And so one of the things we do is we measure client happiness, and he now owns that. And so we were talking, and he had come to his team and he said, client contact here, client communication is not optional. It's a leading indicator. So, ultimately we're measuring client happiness. Contact with clients is not the KPI, but if you do it enough, you have happier clients. If you don't do it enough, you don't. He decided to say, he decided, it was his choice, not mine. He's going to be inflexible on this. I don't care how much your clients love you. I don't care how well you do. You are never going to skip client communication being constant, regular, and so forth. And when he messaged it, which was his call, and Alexis and I, and this is growth, neither of us probably would have messaged it or even said that, because it's a leading indicator and I'm holding him accountable, and some of the people he's messaging it to are doing great. But leadership is not him doing what we want. It's him having clarity on what he needs to do so that we all live what we're trying to accomplish within our values and so forth. So, but I did talk to him and I said, when you shared that with the team, that's beautiful. You're saying, look, this is who we are, but you didn't include a value. Now, there's a couple of values you could have included. In that particular case, my choice would have been that we develop personal relationships with our clients with empathy and understanding as our foundation. You cannot develop a personal relationship. You cannot show empathy and understanding in someone's difficult time without constant communication or regular communication. So that's a small tweak. And someone out there may go, that's nonsense, Mark. How big of a deal does it make? I would argue, since everyone on the team memorizes the values on the way in and they hear them regularly, that when the message comes down, this must be done because this is who we are. And look, I'm not just saying it's who we are. It's not just a measurement you have to live up to as a team member. It's in the core values that we talk about all the time. And so that's how those values that I was against doing actually play directly in the day-to-day progress of or growth of the team.
Thank you for that example. I think it helps those who are trying to figure out, like, what does it really do to get a little bit more tangible, a little bit more concrete. I'd like to go back to the idea that, we probably should have done this on the front end so that some of those skeptical people would say, now, so why should I listen to this guy? Because for 20 years, you built this thing. We never quite said the rest of the story. So you had 20 or 30 people 7-8 years ago when you started doing this work. And now you have roughly how many people?
I think we're at about 145, closing in 150.
140, 150. So that 5x growth, roughly, if you're 20 to 30, that 5x growth, how much of that happens without you doing this foundational work of purpose, values, mission kind of stuff that we've been talking about?
I am confident. Alexis and I have had many discussions on this because for every business owner out there, I think most would agree, at least if they came from us, like us, they're technicians first, right? That's not true. There's a lot of people who didn't start that way. But for those who started as someone who was great at what they did, I am confident our growth would have continued. And we were on steady growth, or we had some ups and downs. So not steady without some speed bumps, but generally speaking, steady growth. So, we were in the low 20s. It's been 8 years. We're probably at, mid to high 40s. We probably would have kept growing. We were doing good things. We think our name was getting out there. We believe our reputation was growing. We weren't going to suddenly stop. However, our revenue is 5x. Team members are close to 5x, give or take. Profit is also, dramatically different. But there's more to it than that, right? Because I think we're impacting our team members more than ever. I think we're able to do things for clients. Not that we didn't always do everything we could, but now we have resources to do it even more. Our lives are different. It is no longer a sprint. Now look, my calendar is still not where I want it to be. I'm still staring at a calendar that I'm going, man, I've brought in so many great people and trained them to be leaders and they're doing great. Why is my calendar booked for the next 3 weeks? So I haven't solved this and I'm still working on it, but the improvement is significant. And I do get more of that calendar now by far is spent on thinking and planning and meeting with people who are impacting, not me doing. And now the things I'm doing more and more, still not there, Brett. I am not, this, I am not where I think I can be, and where I will be and I keep climbing towards. But more of my time is spent in the CEO visionary stuff. I had almost no time for that, Brett, because all my time, every time I would try to block time and plan things out, and I had some success with that. Absolutely, I had some success, and I think blocking time is amazing. But there's a limit. There's a ceiling I was hitting without basically getting the outside, getting some of these things. And it goes beyond values, right? So I know that's what we've talked about. But
let's talk. Yeah, I actually want to talk about another thing that you mentioned already, which was, as you grew to 20, 30 people, now 140, 150, but as you grew to 20, 30 people, you did hire great people. And when I asked you about leadership, you said, oh yeah, we have good leaders. And looking back now, you would say we had good people who were doing things that we told them. So I like that distinction. I still remember that you and Alexis were turned to a lot. It was like, what? And because it's a family, like, you two are married and there was a little bit of a family feel to the firm. It was almost like, hey, let's go ask mom and dad, or somebody might ask mom, and then if you didn't like that answer, let's go ask dad, right? There was some of those dynamics in your firm. And while you weren't doing everything, you still had a lot of input in everything. And bottleneck might not be an exaggeration around certainly the important things going on in the firm.
We remain a bottleneck to our firm, just far less than we were 8 years ago. And giving up control was very hard. It remains hard, Brett. It's just gotten way easier. So if I'm looking in the mirror now, and I'm being honest with myself, there are still things that are come to me and check with me stuff that shouldn't be come to me and check with me stuff. But it is a fraction. It's a fraction of what it was even 2 or 3 years ago. And the reason is, the first attempt to grow leadership was very hard. We didn't always realize where we knew we were the bottleneck, right? We knew that before 8 years ago. We just thought we had to be. Like, for as good as these people are, we know the answers, right? We know what we want. And you see what you look for. I'm a huge believer in that. So for Alexis and I, and I'll speak for me, but I'm pretty sure she would agree, we knew what we wanted. And it's funny because Alexis and I almost never agree on the little stuff. But when you work together and live together, and plus we were married, so we probably didn't start out with totally opposite values. We're usually on the same page on the big stuff. So when you're looking for, can these people really do it our way, you constantly see them not do it because you're looking for that, right? And you don't know how to grow them and train them in any event. So that first pass at leadership was not particularly successful. I'm thinking right now, one of the people we hired, who's in basically a 5-person leader, there are 5 leaders of our firm that report directly to Alexis or me. Only one, I think he's been with us 6+ years. So, and he was the first one in his role. Outside of that, we set our sights too low. What we thought we wanted in a leader was not what I would call a leader today. We didn't onboard them correctly in any event. So yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff plays such a role. And I think that I had many conversations around leadership that the information was there, but I wasn't willing to hear it yet. I had to, and we had to work our way out of being, again, we're still a bottleneck. I mean, and by the way, because we've had to come to terms and had to adjust our org chart a little bit, because we tried to set up the org chart with me as the CEO and Alexis as the COO. We did it that way because I am more big picture, outward thinking, and how do we conquer the world? And Alexis is much more task oriented, day to day, and great leading that part of it. We actually switched the org chart around because, in effect, there's still this mom and dad piece to it, right? Not literally, but there's still this, the number of times I'll say, this is my answer, but hold off, I want to check with Alexis. Yeah. Because, we play different roles, but there's a lot of overlap. And so that hasn't removed, and we had to make the org chart recently. You probably haven't seen the new one, but probably about several months ago, we're like, we're going to have to get realistic with this org chart because it's not that. That's how it should be maybe, but that's not how it is, even though we now have direct reports, and I do get to make a lot of the calls with my direct reports as leaders, and she makes the same with her direct reports as leaders, but it's not a traditional CEO, COO role.
Yeah, there's definitely a very tight collaboration there going on. So I like to just underscore what you said about the bottleneck. We all do this in our businesses. We end up being the bottleneck, period. The question is to what degree, right? And earlier on, you guys, the bottleneck was totally constricted. Like it was really tight. And now that's loosened up some. I've enjoyed watching you get more capable leaders around you that can take some stuff off of your plate. And even though you still enjoy personally trying a case occasionally, like technically you wouldn't have to. You do have the team. You do that for enjoyment now, not out of necessity. But they're just an ability for you guys to level up the business when you've got capable leaders in place that could take some of that responsibility and ownership off of your shoulders. It's been fun to watch.
And I, first of all, thank you for that. And I'll add another piece just as you were saying that. There were people on my team at the time that I was like, this person is great. Then as you continue your growth and getting an idea of what you're looking for, you realize this person is great at certain things, but we were putting people in roles. I'll give you an example. So there was someone on the team, great team member. We really needed someone other than me to manage this certain area. And so we put this team member as the manager because that team member had an interest in management and we needed one. We didn't open, now every position, almost without exception, we open up for internal interviews and external interviews, even if it's the kind of role where it would be better if it was an internal promotion, at internal and external. And before we start interviewing, we know exactly what that person's good at, as opposed to just going, oh, I have a need, this person wants to fill the need, and this person's really good where they are. That is, you could get lucky, but you could also have a disaster where you put someone in a position because that's where they want to be and you have the need. Oh, it couldn't be more perfect. Are you sure? Because we had multiple times we had to learn this lesson where we shouldn't be designing the perfect company by looking at the people in it. In other words, what does the perfect company look like? And then we can find, there's a place, usually, not always, sometimes people hit a ceiling and you outgrow them and it's no longer the great fit. That happens as well. But I think there are too many times that we, at least throughout this process, were like, I have a need. Oh, it'll be great. I'll just move this person. When we didn't open it up for interviews, we weren't clear on if that person excels, what are they doing? What are their big three? How are we going to manage their big three? Who are they directly reporting to? How are they going to do their role? Instead, it was just, hey, let's put them there. And then you're sitting there months later, you're like, wow, this isn't working. And it's because of a lack of clarity. And that's even true, not just for leaders, where you have someone in your team like, oh, this person's great, but it's a little bit frustrating. And creating, the big three, this is funny too, because we joked earlier about the values. So now it's going to sound like a recurring pattern. But our first pass of the big three, you may not remember this, was a big six. And you asked me why big six. And I said, because we're twice as good as you. But the truth,
I remember that. Yeah.
The truth was,
and for context, people might not know what big three are.
So that's right.
Quickly, big three are just the three most important measurable responsibilities of a given role. It's kind of how we measure the ongoing success in a role. It's the value exchange. Every 2 weeks they get paid. Every 2 weeks they deliver these measurable results or activities. Those are the big three. So you're like, no, it's not three, it's six, because we're twice as good.
And the truth was, it was because, first of all, as I see it, the big three is now fundamental to who we are, because they're basically key performance indicators, and no position can have more than three. Well, at the time I was like, this is impossible. I don't have anyone who only has, I'm not working at the stamping plant in Dearborn for a car coming off the line, and they just have to stamp out quarter panels. And I'm not saying someone who stamps quarter panels literally only does that. But my point is, our team members do a lot. So I was coming up with these key performance indicators that were not always measurable. And sometimes they were measurable and not valid. That's gone now. For it to be a key performance indicator, what we call a big three, it is 3, 2, or 1 of never more than 3. It is always measurable. So there are things that are more important than some of my big three. If I can't measure it, it doesn't go on there. And my first pass at measurement had times where I was like, well, it's close enough. Close enough. Now, you don't have to be perfect, but close enough. It's a good guidepost. For the team members, like, whoa. You're judging me and saying my job rests on how well I do at this 1, 2, or 3 items. And we all agree that some of this is nonsense. Boiling it down and working really hard to pick only things that are measurable and where the measurement is valid has been amazing. And I really think it's been amazing for the team. Now, are there people we have lost both when we did it and now because of them? Yes. Many are because they are people who otherwise would have hit out and never performed well, but they would have been able to float under the radar. Float under the radar is probably not a perfect term, but anyway, fly under the radar. But it's not just that. There are people who just don't like and I understand this, I respect it, I totally get it. I don't want to be measured every day with a dashboard. I mean, I want to, that doesn't feel right to them. But I would say most high performers love seeing the dashboards every day that are proof positive that they excel. And not all of them. I mean, you may have a different take on it, but mostly the A players, the game changers, it's great for them and for us, because we know you're great, you know you're great, but now it's not even arguable.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all. I like the transparency, the visibility of those things. Like, hey, how are we doing? Each individual, how are we doing collectively? How do we see that? So really great. All right, Mark, I have to let you get back to making happy clients in the Phoenix area with their personal injury cases.
And Brett, because we met you, now you may remember, but years ago we had the Tucson Takeover, a strategic initiative because of our annual planning. And now we're all over the state, and more is coming soon, but I'll leave it at that. But
which is awesome. Yeah. So I just want to, I guess, kind of summarize some of the conversation we made. We started with this, you were growing well, and you had built a successful firm, but when you took the time to really set a vision, and we talked about values a lot, but purpose, values, and mission, when you got the time to put that foundational piece in place for your business, now you were able to create a shared identity that everybody understood. You could hire to, you could lead to, you could fire to, but you were able to build something off of that accelerated your growth, and along with getting the right leaders in place that could allow you to be less and less of a bottleneck. And then we talked about just now the personal clarity, personal ownership of big three, or having those clear, measurable responsibilities for every role in the business. Those are three of the things, and you just alluded to planning, but there's a bunch of business building work that you guys did, and no amount of teaching or sharing, other people teaching you guys this stuff would have meant anything if you hadn't gone and done it. But all of this business building work is what allowed you to take a really nice growing firm and turn it into one of the biggest, most successful here in the state, which is just awesome to see. So thank you for sharing your insights today. If people want to get to know more about the Husband and Wife Law Team, or connect with you on social in any way, or go to your website, how would they do that?
So it is super easy to find. So if you type in Husband and Wife Law Team anywhere, social media platform, you can Google it, whatever it is, you'll find us. For better or worse. If anyone wants to reach out to me directly, I'm at mark@breyerlaw.com, mark@breyerlaw.com. I'm happy to bounce. I love, as the postscript to all this, the lawyer who loves being a trial lawyer and loves fight. I enjoy trial more than most people will ever like their job. I cannot explain the thrill of standing up to fight for someone who deserves someone to fight for them in a court, the jury there. I love it. What happened along this journey that we were almost forced into is I love small business. I love talking about the ways to grow a business and the work it takes and better ways to build a better mousetrap. So if anyone's like at all heard anything I said and wants to challenge it or question it or bounce things around, I will be happy to do it. I love it, to be honest with you.
Great. Well, we love having you in our community and love having you as a guest today on the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast. Thank you all for listening. Please share, like, review, do all those things on whatever platform you're listening on, so that we can help as many seven-figure business owners as possible with the amazing sharing that goes on with guests like Mark. Tune in next time. We'll have another great guest, and thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast with your host, Brett Gilliland. Be sure to leave a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. You may also want to visit our website, eliteentrepreneurspodcast.com, to find additional resources to grow your business from 7 figures to 10 million and beyond.